If you clicked on this video, it's probably because you've played Starfield and just want to know more about the Sanctum Universum and the Unity, which the Sanctum is introducing to humanity. I'm going to cover what the game conveys to us about the Sanctum and how it compares to Christianity, and which real-world beliefs could be foundational to the Sanctum. Because this video is long, I'll put various subject point locations in the description for you. Okay, so let me cover a few contextual basics first, since without them the Sanctum wouldn't be understandable. Of course, since we're describing what's in the game and analyzing it, there will be spoilers. So what are the basics we need to know? 1. The game starts in the year 2330, over 300 years in the future. The game has humanity setting foot on Mars in 2050 and settling on Mars for the purpose of mining in 2100. Cydonia, the only town there, is a company town. It doesn't have either a Terra Brew or Chunks, which are in-game eateries, so it's hard to even call it an actual town. 2. Humans develop an engine that can travel to other star systems in seconds, called a grav drive. This grav drive is at first flawed, and the flaw causes Earth's atmosphere to dissipate, causing Earth to become uninhabitable by 2203. 3. Humans are forced to evacuate Earth and move to the stars, though apparently not all humans escaped. By the time the game starts, humans have major settlements at Jemison in the Alpha Centauri system, Aquila City in the Cheyenne system, and at Neon in the Narian system. There are some other settlements too, and many small ones of course, but those are the 3 major urban centers. With the addition of the DLC Shattered Space, the city of Dazra was added in the Kevink system. In the relatively short period of time spanning the Earth's final demise until the present in-game time, there were 3 wars. Humans at their crazy best, right? One of them was based on religion, and that was the Serpent's Crusade, dating 2240 to 2263. So I guess my number 4 should be the fact that the new religion of the Promised developed independently in Dazra, based on a belief in the creator being they call the Great Serpent. 5. Old Earth religions are not to be found in the settled systems, at least not outwardly. There are no Bibles or anything like that to be found among the surviving books. People have the same morality, they still say God, and they still talk of evil, but there are no traditional churches and the like. The game starts with a clean religious slate. Besides the atheistic group called the Enlightened and the Promised, both discussed in Part 1, the Sanctum Universum develops through one man in Jemison. It's only been around for about 2 decades, with Keeper Aquilus still living. 6. This is a playing-related note. A player can't find out about these beliefs in just 1 or 2 spots or in just 1 or 2 ways. The game has major clues and minor clues, and it's very easy to miss the minor clues. By minor, I don't mean less important, but that the knowledge is gained from a minor character that you might never meet, or via a computer file you might miss, or even by some piece of art or something. It may very well be that you picked a certain dialogue choice that gave one bit of information while you missed another bit due to that choice. That's just the way Bethesda games are, and I don't mind since it makes the game challenging in a certain way. But when it comes to Starfield, it's more time-consuming than usual because of its massive size and the great number of NPCs walking around. I even found references to Christmas and Valentine's Day on some ship floating around somewhere. Well, that was some in-game context, but there's actually some real-world context that is relevant to the faith-related content in this game. I don't mean real-world foundations for the fictional faith, which I'll get to later, but the fact that part of the hype before game launch was that Bethesda purposely made questions about faith a part of the game. This is one reason I've spent so much time on the subject, even though it was making me crazy. I have a Part 1 video about the Enlightened and the Promise that you can view too, if you haven't already. Anyway, what came out of Bethesda about this faith or religion subject matter? Both Todd Howard, director, and Emil Pagliarolo, design director, were interviewed a number of times with this subject coming up. I'll give just a few examples. In an August 2023 GQ magazine article, Emil said that Starfield, quote-unquote, push-pulled him from atheist to agnostic and back again throughout the development process, We're tackling some pretty big themes that your average shooter probably doesn't get into." End quote. He also mentions that there will be theological themes included in the game during a Polygon interview from August 2023. In a Discord server Constellation Q&A in August 2023, he actually admitted to getting a tattoo of a House of Arun symbol, even though we discovered that faith in the Great Serpent has unleashed incredible violence and leads to the disappearances and deaths of apostates in the current timeline. Weird, right? And the fact that he's a self-described atheist makes it even weirder, in my view. He also mentioned in the same interview that the Sanctum believes God is guiding us all, which is contradicted in-game. But it all depends on which characters you pay attention to. Characters are writing. Todd Howard shares about it similarly. He mentioned, as Emil does, that a staff person who went to Jesuit seminary wrote some of the stuff for them. It seems that he at minimum wrote the Sanctum Writings, which you'd think would therefore convey something of Christianity, but those writings are philosophical, with basic Christian doctrines contradicted. Howard, in a September 2023 interview for Esquire, kind of gushed about only someone who went to school like that and was living it could legitimately write such texts, even though they're philosophical. In that same interview, Howard says that we get into themes of religion, of science. We ask a lot of good questions in the game. We have some interesting answers. The end of the game will be a little bit controversial." End quote. I don't know if Todd and staff sat down and reviewed everything that is said and written in the game related to important questions like what happens to us when we die, because while this is brought up, the minimal info provided is frustratingly contradictory, meaning there is no answer. But really, who would expect actual answers from a video game anyway? Regarding other things, like the multiverse, the reason for its existence in the game is not related to real-world theories, as we don't find ancient artifacts to guide us to a place where new universes are made using ourselves. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but in essence, the Sanctum is about knowledge, and the New Testament is about love. These are, of course, important distinctions. I don't think love is ever mentioned by the Unity or in regards to it. The Sanctum's God seems like something you might expect to find in the coldest space. Cold. Now, we are told that the entity desires to know us, but since it doesn't give us any real answers, and the part of us that is removed to stay there is no longer actually us, it all is pretty meaningless. It's not at all comforting to know there are other parts of ourselves, and clones, and existence, even though the game seems to lean toward thinking so. Anyway, the main point here is that Bethesda very much wanted to have a discussion about religious themes in Starfield, and we are welcome to take them seriously. That they were successful in bringing up relevant questions and then providing some answers to those questions, I'm not sure about at all. I'd say this aspect of the game was not successful. Now that we have those two contexts behind us, let's get to the Sanctum Universum. The name Sanctum Universum is Latin for sacred universe. The writings by Keeper Aquilus are headbanging material, which he tells us are philosophy. So they're not to be taken as scriptures or revelations from God, at least not yet. These are Among the Graph Jumps, Sanctum Universum Volumes 1 to 3, and A Greater End Volumes 1 and 3. They are written in a style that one might describe as the opposite of engaging. Despite what many fans have claimed at online forums, I believe the author of the following writings is still up in the air. The Pilgrim's writings 1, 2, 3, and final. The reason I'm not totally sure he's the author is because Aquilus not only has an alter ego, the Hunter, but the dates of some things at the Pilgrim's home and stories related to the Pilgrim make the whole affair mysterious. The dates of notes and the stories go back hundreds of years, with one story indicating that the person appeared to be immortal. If the Starborn, which Aquilus is, are truly immortal, you don't discover this when becoming one yourself in the game. You in fact seem mortal based on things said, even though your physiology has changed. In fact, one of the most annoying aspects of the game is that after you become Starborn, you can't do what the other Starborn do, like communicate between themselves and disappear and reappear elsewhere at will. It's a jarring flaw in the story of the game, in my opinion. In any case, Aquilus is an aged person, so that alone seems to indicate that Starborn are not immortal. Perhaps very long-lived, but not immortal. I could be wrong, though, and I'll be talking about this more. The hunter, who is Aquilus's alter ego, also has dialogue indicating he's quite old. With all that said, the Pilgrim's writings do seem to describe Aquilus's thoughts and activities, with the one confusing story perhaps handed down in a fashion that suited the storyteller. Besides Aquilus's and the Pilgrim's writings, you gain knowledge of the Sanctum Universum, or Unity, via people talking and your own experiences. I want to first share what you hear Aquilus tell listeners outside the Sanctum building, and what the other two Sanctum representatives say. What they say verbally gives a familiar impression of God, and it gives a false impression because, well, they do not jibe with what you will come to know. In Jemison, Aquilus tells a group of people to forgive others and get along with them, since a new age is upon us. This is both nice and somewhat Christian teaching, but why this behavior is encouraged is never explained, since, as we'll see, the hunter is correct when he tells you that the unity does not judge. Horace of the Sanctum in Sidonia will tell you that they accept all world faiths, that God has a plan for your life, and that God provided a way for us to space travel, and that faith in God is what brought us to the stars, quote unquote. That last statement makes no sense. Siwu of the Sanctum in Aquila, which is not fully opened for business yet, for some reason, will talk of striving to see God's hand at work. As we'll see from others' experiences, the writings, and our own experience with the unity, much of this just doesn't seem true. What others are we talking about? A couple of named characters at the Jemison Sanctum will tell you they've experienced something or felt something during a grav jump, as Keeper Aquilus teaches. But that's it, no real experiences or communications. Other people say they go on grav jumps but haven't experienced anything. Then there's the obvious biggie, which led to a totally different religion emerging, and that is Janan Varun's experience of an entity during a grav jump. In that experience, the entity is described as both indescribable and as a great serpent which talked with Janan. Aquilus and the Starborn never bring this up, never try to explain it, nor claim to have any similar experiences. Regarding God acting to give us the ability to leave Earth in order to seek Him, a Sanctum visitor, Evie, confirms that the Sanctum believes that. No one ever questions why it was necessary for Earth to be destroyed for this to happen, but you find out that at the time, scientists claimed they didn't know why. They just said it was an act of God. That is natural, but in the end, true. It's like a pun, a twisted pun. The following are main tenets of the Sanctum as found in the writings, as much as I found decipherable and important anyway, with some real-world info thrown in. Things that you discover throughout the game, which either confirm or contradict these claims, follow in the next section. 1. Because of the situation humanity is now in, it has to reconsider its old ideas about God. This is a philosophical voyage. We need to forget our ideas of a Sky King. Since no Messiah of any type appeared to reign on Earth before it was destroyed, this seems logical in the game's universe. At one of the points where he asks us to forget about our ideas of past religions, the things he lists about them are all negative. He never once mentions love. Instead, his prime maxim is, "This is the foregone essence of humankind. All people desire to know," which is from Aristotle, and he neither admits or addresses any other basic human desires. As far as being a philosophical voyage, one could dissect much of Starfield's dialogue for philosophical treasures, I'm sure. But I'm looking at this from a player experience perspective, not a philosophy school one. 2. God is reality, is existence itself. It has been called Omega, the end. He leaves out Alpha, the beginning. Yet God is also a being, is truth, and is mystery. It seems that the Sanctum espouses both pantheism and deism. As their name implies, the universe itself is holy. Repeatedly emphasized is that it is unknowable. since there are other dimensions we cannot perceive. It is also a point. The point reference is from Plato and Neoplatonism and reflects monism. Various groups espouse monism, including some New Age adherents. I'll provide a monism reference in the description that is both accessible online and understandable. The unity may represent the idealism type of attributive monism, where the universal mind is getting to know itself through human consciousness and intellect. 3. To quote, all is physical, all is determined, and there is no unseen hand which created anything, simply the forces of physics working mindlessly at each other. These two separate claims contradict one another. If all is determined, then it can't also be the result of random forces. It is also contradicted by both his appointed caretakers in Aquila City and Sidonia. One says that it's wonderful to see God's working hand, and the other that God guides you. 4. God did not purposely make us, yet our essence is what was imagined by its mind. Even though it made our essence, quote-unquote, it seeks to understand us and know us. This seems at least somewhat contradictory. It also contradicts the role in creation this entity is said to have, which is what soil is to a plant. The soil is necessary for the plant to grow, but the soil doesn't take care of or direct the plant. So when someone says in-game that God is guiding us, it can only mean all of humanity, not us as individuals. And the only reason the claim can be seen as applicable is that this God intervened when it perceived the human race capable enough to travel in space. By Aquilus' statements, we should understand that it did not guide us or any person prior to that. In fact, while in the Unity, it says it will watch what we choose to do. The previous tenet is that all is physical, yet we have an essence from this Creator, so it seems that we are partly non-physical. Since the Creator itself says you have a special something that makes you you, it does not seem that this something would be classified as physical. Also, where does this special something of the individual come from if this God did not make it? And yet somehow everything is said to be random and physical. It's mind-numbing. 5. We are called to not think of God as benevolent or caring, though the author says he'll come back to that later. Again, one of his acolytes contradicts him on this. The unity is the ground of being, the unknowable thing which underlies reality. It can be thought of as God, but we may be misconceiving it. It craves for us to return to it. All this fits in very well with New Age beliefs. To sum up this point, this being waited for us to evolve. It doesn't provide goodness or caring, and it wants us to make the effort to come to it because that's what it desires. In this context, why should humans care? Just because we want to know? Know what? All people everywhere want justice and believe there is some mechanism for justice out there, even if the Eastern and Western religions have different beliefs about it. People in-game talk of evil quite a bit, yet this God doesn't care. And where did this ubiquitous concept come from? Apparently not from God in this existence, whereas in Christianity people are made in the image of God. The God you meet does not care about justice or what we perceive as evil, but only outcomes that lead us to it. That is, all the benefit seems to be on its side. Lastly, the purpose of our lives, Aquila says, is to become closer to the divine. We can do that through grav jumps. Akin to a New Age movement belief, there are special beings that may be encountered to help us with our purpose, and Keeper Aquilus is one of those, a starborn. He promises that we can seize the path of our fates, no longer being subject to the whims of physical processes. There are a number of encounters one can have in the game that teach us about the mysteries of the Unity. Not all are pleasant, and not all support Keeper Aquilus, and they do not give us all the answers by any stretch. The Emissary and the Hunter. You of course learn some things from the two other Starborn you have contact with, the Emissary and the Hunter. You'd think that the emissary was some kind of official from the Unity, but he or she isn't or doesn't really appear to be. The emissary and other like-minded Starborn worship the Unity and seek to keep bad actors from reaching the Unity. The Hunter is the selfish version of Keeper Aquilus. That is, he and Aquilus are the same person, so to speak, but end up deciding different ways to go in different universes. Anyhow, he and Starborn like him are the bad actors. The Hunter will kill to get an artifact and doesn't care. He doesn't see it as wrong, he's just being expedient. When he tells you that the Unity doesn't judge, you can discover that he's actually telling the truth. He says that the emissary uses the same methods as he does, so they are hypocrites. When it comes to lying, though, the Hunter basically agrees with the emissary that it's wrong. It's easier to side with the emissary since they seem to have some morals, as other human characters in the game do. It's harder to side with the self-interested and murderous Hunter, who is completely jaded. He thinks all humans that do good and try to get others to do good, or at least not do bad, are also only self-interested and lord over people, that they aren't honest about their own selfishness. And if you don't think he is all that murderous, you discover that he indeed is, since if you side with him, he requires you to go and murder Aquilus, which, as a note, you can get out of. When going through the Unity, there are 3 different outcomes, depending if you sided with the emissary, the Hunter, or neither one. These outcomes show that the Unity puts a positive spin on every choice, making no moral distinctions between them. But I should say that in my opinion, the Unity is actually favoring the Hunter in a certain way. It says that the Hunter will influence humans to fight power where they find it, yet the only powers against what he does are other Starborn or those we consider good. Humans generally think that killing to get what you want is wrong, so I found this to be pretty disturbing. I was shocked that it didn't care at all. What's funny or ironic about it is that the Hunter keeps fighting for the ability to go through the Unity in order to realize what Keeper Aquilus says is basic to our being, our desire to know. The Hunter can't give up trying to find the truth about the temples and other mysteriously created things that the Unity is not willing to tell us. Another point is made by the emissary when you first encounter him or her from their ship, the Helix. They threaten you and tell you you shouldn't have the artifact or be seeking them, which is weird. They tell you that you are walking a twisted path, that you shouldn't be wanting to leave your loved ones, that they live for a set time and in a determined place and time like yourself, which is totally contradictory to the Sanctum Writings, which say that all is random and that God just set things in motion and then left it alone. They also say that the entity, God, now wants to get to know us. Anyway, the emissary at this time also says they've killed for less than getting an artifact. Why say that even to scare someone? It's all very odd, since the Starborn are all former humans. Where did the first ones come from, and why wouldn't more humans join them? And of course, the whole thing about a set place and time makes no sense since, the Unity makes a new universe with you. The Pilgrim. During the main quest, you get to visit what is called Pilgrim's Rest and read some of his notes about his life. It seems everyone assumes that the Pilgrim is Keeper Aquilus, but there's something that bugs me about it. It does seem like it, as the Pilgrim decides to stop jumping universes, looking for answers, and settle down to help others. The thing that has always made me question it is a story about the Pilgrim, the one the Varun know. They say that the Pilgrim, when trying to talk with Jinan, was killed by him several times until the Pilgrim didn't come back. Specifically, the Pilgrim's last death seemed definitive. This could just be an exaggerated story that was passed on, though. But I'm left with wondering if Starborn can basically be dead and then recover in the same universe and place they were before. Are they like a game character you play, respawning? And do they really live forever, basically, since these stories go back more than 100 years? Also in the Pilgrim's place are drawings with notes on them. One of them depicts a woman in old-fashioned clothes, I guess from the 1800s, and the notes about it indicate that the Pilgrim lived then. But how on earth did he live in the 19th century? Do Starborn ever get transported back in time? Their transportation is via spaceship, and humanity is drawn into the Unity which provides these things once there is space travel. So how is it that he's in an era prior to space travel? It's all mysterious, and as far as I can tell, nonsensical with the information we have. The Pilgrim's writing, too, promised to give you an answer about the Unity, which you, the player, already know. That is, that there are multiple universes, and the Unity is the gateway. You don't learn much at all. He even says he's going to give up on finding the answers. It seems the answer is to stop expecting answers and to live the life you were given. One more thing. In his bathroom is a note that says, bizarrely, I amn't crazy. I had actually never encountered that contraction before, so just wow. Though I found that Scottish and some Irish people use it. So is it letting us know that the Pilgrim was originally Scottish? But besides that, why write a note to yourself about not being crazy unless you or someone else is thinking you are or might be? Did he forget to take his meds that day? I joke, but what are we to make of it? It could make some sense in relation to a possible real-world person that I do talk about later, though. The Unity. Other things you find out while in the Unity are that truth is relative, as the entity tells you that everything is filtered through your eyes, and that's all you can know. So apparently 2 objects placed with 2 other objects don't always add up to 4 objects in our shared physical experience. That's why the entity is like you looking in a mirror, which made me gasp and laughed at first. Like you are the center of the universe. Talk about disappointing. It's like madness. You want to know the truth of the universe, and all you get is yourself telling you all truth is whatever your lens makes of it. How far does this solipsism go? It also tells you that you are energy, so you can't be destroyed. Here, apparently, it's referring to what people call the soul. I'm not sure of the logic here, since energy can dissipate. Does some energy in our body become conscious? We aren't told or shown anything else relating to the afterlife of others who don't collect the artifacts and become Starborn. However, when talking to a certain character after becoming Starborn, you seem to know all about it. Zawadi, Wade, and Jemison. This elderly lady is dying, and you can tell her that, quote-unquote, everything that was will be born again, including you. Now, I don't know where my character got this information. This information is not anywhere else in the game as far as I've experienced it. Your character is reborn as a Starborn because of all you go through to do it, not just because you're human and died. Nothing is said anywhere about what happens to regular humans when they die, except here, as far as I can tell. Since everything is included in the statement, it sounds like all will just be recreated. Nothing is said about whether you'll remember your past or not, or if life will be better or anything. It is not referring to the Christian meaning of born again, as that happens while one is living and refers to a spiritual birth. And when one gets their resurrected body sometime in the future, it will be a joining and not a rebirth. It will be like Jesus' body, glorified, and not for reliving on earth in the same way again. New Agers believed in reincarnation, though, that you can spiral upward through time until merging with the cosmic consciousness. Horus. Horus is the Sanctum representative in Sidonia. One of the things he says is, faith in God is what brought us to the stars, which simply isn't true. The grav drive brought us to the stars, and from what the developer of the grav drive writes, faith had nothing to do with it. It was him alone deciding to follow a certain path that would destroy Earth, and that after he tested the data given to him by the entity. Dr. Victor Aiza. You don't meet Dr. Aiza, but can read his computer notes at the end of the Apollo Ruins mission. He is the one that made the grav drive, but actually, he got the info on how to make it from a vision after touching the first artifact found. He said he was out for 12 days. He was shown what the future of humans would be if he made the grav drive by a being that looked just like him. So it was the Unity entity. He was also shown Earth's destruction, so in his mind it was an either-or proposition. Either we keep Earth or we travel the stars and abandon Earth. Out of guilt, he killed himself. Perhaps because there was a way to fix the grav drive that he wasn't aware of until it was too late. But then he realized he could have done something about it if he had just thought more. The project's engineer fixed it actually quickly once he realized what was wrong. See, the doctor didn't consult with others about the possible side effects of the device. He could have asked the engineers to check to see if they could find anything that would cause the catastrophe, or at least keep a closer eye on things that were happening with the Earth so that he could figure it out sooner. But he didn't do those things. Since the entity could have given the doctor this information too, but didn't, can you imagine what the doctor must have felt? An engineer figures the problem out quickly once it's recognized, yet this entity chose not to share this critical information. Who would then think that the entity was God? Why would God do such a thing? Destroying the Earth was not necessary to get humans to explore, as we would have done that in a heartbeat anyway. Additionally, you'd think that Aiza would have thought about it more, since the grav drive, left unfixed, would have destroyed other planets too. The emissary and the hunter pose the same question to you, as if it's an either-or proposition. Either keep the Earth and don't space travel, or space travel without Earth. The way they talk makes it seem like maybe the hunter was the one who gave Aiza the information, but the hunter does not appear in visions. As the doctor is dead and the artifact is still there, it seems that the hunter was not Aiza or another starborn influencing him at the time. In any case, seeing as it seems the information is given by the entity, it's funny that the emissary worships it so much, since the scenario aligns with the hunter's way of thinking, which is actually another reason to not believe that the hunter and Aiza are universe twins. The hunter thinks the sacrifice of the Earth was a decent exchange, and he therefore wouldn't kill himself over it. Well, see how long this is. You could easily write a book on the faiths, philosophy, and science in and related to Starfield. I don't cover every single thing, but try to get into the important points. Just a note. Now I'll talk about real-world faiths and the sanctum. I made a chart or graph with some basic aspects of Christianity, the New Age movement, the Sanctum Universum, and the Promised. As you can see, Christianity and the Promised have a lot in common, as they are both monotheistic and traditional in a number of ways. The Sanctum Universum, or Universals as they're supposed to be called, though the term is rarely heard in the game, has much in common with the New Age movement. Since they accept any faiths to join with them, they have that Unitarian Universalist church aspect. But more specifically, in line with what became New Age thought, was the Unity School of Christianity, founded in 1899. It's now just Unity, and there are hundreds of Unity churches. Unity is a word that pops up frequently in New Age discourse, and I can just imagine someone in real life asking, as Mateo did in the game, if Unity means something more than its standard definition. But New Age thought has more specifics that mesh with the game as well. And yes, New Age thought is still with us. The movement, which began as such in the 1960s, fizzled out by the 1990s, but didn't disappear. There are related subgroups today, and some of their ideas are now relatively mainstream. Looking at the chart, I'll mention the characteristics that I've pretty much gone over first, and then briefly get into the others. The afterlife. Do we have a single eternal life or multiple lives? That is reincarnation. Christianity teaches single eternal life. The game, and the New Age, being highly influenced by Eastern religions, call dibs on reincarnation. God's relationship to us or with us. God is personal in Christianity, being with us and answering prayer, etc., but the God of the sanctum is not like this. Some say it guides us, but taking together all that's said and written in the game, this does not seem correct on a personal level. New Age thought taught that it is up to us to seek God, to make right, that is good, decisions in life in order to move closer to God as our ongoing lives play out. This is much like Sanctum thought, which teaches people to be good and to seek God in space via grav jumps. In Christianity, God seeks us and where we're at. Judgment and morality. In Christianity, God judges and is into justice, yet he is also merciful and forgiving. It's a bit complicated. As we learn in the game, the unity, which is what the sanctum represents, does not judge. If you don't have any sense of judgment based on morality, then what can you really say about bad and selfish behavior? When it comes to the hunter and the unity puts the best spin on his behavior without mentioning any of his victims. I want to say that again. The unity doesn't just ignore his behavior, but puts the best possible spin on it. Disturbing. One wonders where our own morality comes from. How to reach God. In Christianity, answering God's call and faith are what is needed to reach God, specifically faith in Jesus Christ, not works or specific activities or rituals. With the sanctum and the New Age, specific activities are required. However, the game itself seems to be promoting something else, and that's the idea of faith itself, in something, is rewarded by the universe. I'll discuss this later. Creation. In Christianity, God created purposefully. He decided on a world, the way it would be before he created it, and he even knows each one of us before we're born. The sanctum teaches that God set things in motion, then left it, that creation developed randomly, and that all is physical, at least until the present time. Nature of truth. In Christianity, truth is objective. Things are true outside of us and are not relative to our views or perceptions. The sanctum views truth as relative or subjective, even though there are contradictions to this view. Love is important. As mentioned earlier, the unity and the writings don't bring up love. The Pilgrim brings the subject up, but that's it. To the sanctum, knowledge is paramount, not love. In Christianity, love is paramount, and knowledge or wisdom comes from God. It's kind of an amazing shock to find that the unity doesn't really impart any knowledge. The hunter keeps aggressively making his way back to the unity with the goal of finally finding out who made the temples and other things starborn are gifted. His alter ego decides to stop looking for that and love those around him, to be a positive influence on others. Interestingly, Janan Varun recognized this basic human need and taught that the great serpent loved those who believed in him. There will be a new age. All the faiths believe in a new age of some sort or other. In Christianity, Christ will return and begin a new age, and then after that period, a new heaven and new earth will be formed. Keeper Aquilus says a new age is coming. The New Age movement was so called because they believed the new astrological Age of Aquarius had started in the 20th century, or if not, was starting in the 24th century, and that is when Starfield begins. Aquilus's name sounds a lot like Aquarius. It also sounds like Aquila, and Aquila is also a constellation known as the Eagle. According to Astrology King Online, Aquila rules over space exploration, among other major things. Aquila is busy, I tell you. So maybe he had to get rid of some of those other realms like the US, the European Union, and the Vatican in order to focus on space exploration. You know, that's why the Earth's gone. There's also this weird thing about Aquila and Scorpio, and Scorpio figures in the game too, related to the hunter. I guess what's weird is that the Jesuits care about it, as they apparently try to fit pagan astrology into the scriptures. At the site Theopolis, a page talks about the scriptural cherubim that have the faces of ox, lion, eagle, and man, which it connects with 4 constellations of the zodiac. In order for the eagle to work, though, since Aquila is not part of the zodiac, it makes the argument that Scorpio switches places with Aquila, the eagle. This has to do with Revelation 12, and also switching a dragon for a scorpion, which I'm not going to get into. I just brought it up because of the connections to Starfield. Aquila/Aquilus, the scorpion, those 2 switching, and Jesuits. Violence condoned. In Christianity, violence is not generally condoned. The use of violence by the starborn is not looked down upon, it is not judged, and in fact seems common. New Age beliefs, though, taught that one was supposed to do good and be kind to work your way to God. Officially, the promised believe violence is perfectly fine, that killing people who are not one of them is totally legitimate, even desirable. Outside beings assist people finding their way to God or the universal mind. This is not true of Christianity or of the promised. Angels exist in Christianity, but they are helping spirits and not evangelical. I should qualify this whole thing by saying that New Agers don't believe in God as a separate personage. God is everything and we are all God. In other words, they were pantheists. What they strived for is a merging with the universal self. In the New Age, channeling or communicating with helpful beings was encouraged. This was a spiritual thing, but there was a subset of New Agers who claimed to be channeling with aliens. And a specific group of these believers is alluded to in the game, which to me is another clue leading me to pretty much equate the Sanctum Universum with the New Age movement. I'll get to that group in a second. Lastly, the term unity is frequently used. This is true of the New Age and the Sanctum Universum. Okay, now I'll get to that possible New Age connection and have some concluding remarks. The Sanctum Universum has a great deal in common with New Age movement beliefs, many of which I touched on briefly. If I went over the New Age more specifically, we'd be here for another hour. But there is one cult-like group that came out of the New Age movement that I believe is actually quite central to the story concocted for Starfield, and that is Heaven's Gate. There's an abandoned ship you can find in Starfield having a bunch of dead bodies in it. Upon investigating, you find that they all committed suicide by ingesting the orange juice of transcendence. They did this to join with the tail of a comet, which they believed they'd latch to and in that way live forever, traveling the stars. The head of the cult went by the name of Starchild. Now, what's fascinating about this is that one person leaves a note saying that they hesitated in drinking the proverbial Kool-Aid and regretted it, since they saw the souls of the cultists leave their bodies and attach to the comet. So she then drank her juice. So here is that other example in Starfield of faith having real spiritual results and outside of the other two faiths in the game. But how is this cult related to Heaven's Gate? Heaven's Gate was an interesting group that started in 1972 or so, founded by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Lou Nettles. Since members weren't coerced to stay, it's hard to define it as a cult. In March of 1997, everyone that was together at the time killed themselves in order to catch a ride on the Hale-Bopp comet, which they believed was actually an alien spaceship. The founders had come to believe that they were actually aliens that came to Earth to save people before the planet was destroyed. In the words of a History.com article, they believe that the Bible, when it talks about God, Jesus, and the angels, was actually talking about extraterrestrials, a superior race of aliens who appeared to us as gods. In the last days, the aliens will arrive in their spaceships, destroy or recycle the Earth, and save the faithful. End quote. They believed their souls would meet with the ship and that they'd get new bodies. All this about aliens helping to save people, spaceships, and the Earth getting destroyed sounds a lot like Starfield, like this could have been an inspiration for the story. And I can't help imagining that Marshall Applewhite and Keeper Aquilus are the same. Wouldn't that be a hoot? They even look somewhat alike. I actually feel better about the game when thinking about it in this way. It's kind of hilarious. When it comes to the religions in Starfield, they aren't meant to give all the answers. It seems that the Sanctum Universum is providing all the answers since you do experience becoming a Starborn by reaching the unity, but having that happen doesn't at all answer much of anything. You have that experience and you change, but you are far from fulfilled in spiritual enlightenment. Other people out there experience things too, powerful things, that seem unrelated. Inaz's visions and the souls of the Star Child merging with a comet, for instance. You get buffs from the Great Serpent Way shrines. Also, the Great Serpent is never explained. All this can be fully accepted within the New Age view of things, where all religions are welcome. They all have some truths, but none hold the truth. Outside beings can help you to reach God, and the Unity entity mentions the Starborn helping humanity do this if you side with the emissary. One difference is that New Agers promoted peace and helping others to get ahead spiritually, but the Starborn are not all peaceful, and this doesn't seem to matter to the Unity. The game seems to be promoting having faith generally, being at peace where you are, and helping others. The game conveys these ideas in various ways, which actually makes for a schizophrenic experience, since the game was made for moving on to New Game Plus, which takes you away from your friends and family. The game insults the player for doing New Game Plus, which is weird. But the religious thing I like best in the game, which can and should be applied to our own lives, is what Hattie in Sidonia can tell you. She says, "Disagreement's healthy. What good are your beliefs if you ever or never have to defend them? We should all be prepared to defend our beliefs." I now want to mention a few interesting tidbits that seem important but didn't fit in well anywhere. I guess I didn't figure them out. Consider them intriguing endnotes. The Jemison sculpture. The tall sculpture in Jemison that doubles as a water fountain draws comments from some of your followers, so it's obvious that it is being called out in the game. Sarah says something about how much she likes it, wondering what it means. Barrett says something similar about giving him hope. Andreja wonders if the artist had a different original idea that they ended up changing. When working on the Great Serpent Religion, I did notice a similarity between various sinuous sculptures of theirs to the Jemison sculpture. It is a simple open helix pointing towards space. Well, it's open at the top, but is otherwise a closed circle around the pond, so it's really a single thread. There are two smaller sculptures on either side, and these are more complex, having, I think, 5 threads that spiral around. All are made of a metal that seems to be patterned off of asteroid metals. A theme of the game, or the theme, is that God is found in the stars. The sculptures are pointing towards the stars, and the helix is the shape of DNA and many proteins, the stuff of life. Perhaps they point to life beginning somewhere out there. The comments by Sarah and Barrett reflect feelings of well-being, which people associate with the peace of God. Andreja's comment could reflect the artist's commonality with her faith and faith generally. The emissary ship is called the Helix, and one could take it generally that the emissary is like an angel of God. Of course, that's kind of all blown out of the water with the first conversation you have with the emissary. In that first conversation, the emissary is warning you away from the unity, which makes no sense if the unity is God and the unity wants people to seek it. Anyway, just some thoughts on that. The temples in Göbekli Tepe. For a long time, the temples at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey were considered to be the oldest in existence, dating to perhaps 12,000 years ago. So it wouldn't be surprising if they were an inspiration for the Starborn temples. They do have a resemblance. Some people have speculated, too, that these temples had a gateway to heaven or the spiritual realm, so that would tie in with the Starfield story, too. Earlier humans. Where did the temples come from and all the created things that Starborn get? The hunter seeks to know these, as do we all. Possibly we're given a clue. When you go to the lone hills found on planets, at the little islands in the centers of them, you can find not only the freaky old bones of long-lost life, but human bones too. When you come across someone dead in the game, they are virtually always in clothes or a spacesuit. But once in a great while, you can find human bones next to creature piles. So you can surmise that some creature killed them, yet there may be no living things on the planet. So I believe the skeletons are meant to convey that humans also lived at the time of ancient extinct creatures. Old fossils like that can be found here and there in other places too, and sometimes in caves. And the ones in caves are usually on dead worlds. So there was a whole round of life, apparently including humans, that lived a very long time ago. Perhaps it was they who built the temples, and who are somehow part of the unity that is not accessible even to the Starborn. It just seems so absurd that the unity entity won't tell you about them, though. Arabic-looking writing. Maybe someone has figured this out already, but as I like to figure things out myself, I didn't look into it on the internet. Anyway, there are at least 2 signs with what looks like Arabic writing at Kate's in the Well and at the Astro Lounge in Neon. The words spell English words, but if you look carefully, some of the letters are juxtaposed in an odd fashion. I tried to figure out if they spell anything in Arabic or some related language, even converting them to being backwards and upside down and all that, and didn't get anywhere. The religion of the promised seems to have some Islamic inspiration, so I wonder if these signs do too. And that's it. I am happy to be done with this. Not long ago, I played Fallout 3 again for a while, and it was like a breath of fresh air compared to Starfield. It just seems so much more integrated as a game. The side quests and the dialogue all seem like they are indeed in the same universe, with everything related to the lore and story of the game. Bottom line, Fallout 3 makes sense, and Starfield, well, not so much.